Well, on that car note, I want to shift gears a little. You like that? Hello and welcome to Outside the Fox, where we explore what's happening online and why it matters. I'm Kim Horcher.
My name's Ajay Patel, and today we are talking about the future of Firefox. You know it, you love it. It has absolutely been around the internet block.
Yeah, and the internet has changed significantly over the past 20 years, which is forever in tech time.
Yeah.
So now we have AI,
Mhm.
we have the Google antitrust trial and the ramifications that could bring, but Firefox is evolving to meet that moment.
Today, here to join us on this episode, we have the VP of Product, Ajit Varma. Hey, Ajit, how are you doing?
Really good. Excited to talk to you guys about Firefox.
Can you talk about your background and why you decided to join Mozilla?
My background before was I was an engineer earlier in my career. During this time, I built a lot of websites, and back then it was like static websites. People clicked on links. They didn't really do a whole lot. And I switched over to product management, worked in big tech. So I was at Google for a long time, was at Meta working on WhatsApp for quite a while. In between, started my own company, which I sold, and had worked at Square when it was a smaller company. But Mozilla organization is the only organization that I've been in with is such a mission-driven organization. It's really just focused on building a great browser in Firefox, and just doing good for the world and for the internet at large.
Could you tell us a little bit about what you're currently working on?
I am leading product development for Firefox and a few of the other products in Mozilla, like a VPN product. We have some privacy products called Relay and Monitor that just help people protect their online presence, anonymize their email. So in product management, basically what product management does is I help to set the roadmap, the strategy, the priorities, and help guide our great engineers and designers to build the features that are most impactful and valuable to our users.
I appreciate that you said you joined the team due to its drive to be focused on missions. That's kind of why I joined the team too. But I'm wondering if anything has surprised you since becoming part of Firefox.
From an outsider looking into Firefox, you just never really know what is the company focused on, what are things that are being built. People are so passionate within Firefox, and you can really feel how much people care about making the life better for people on the internet. But it is a change of pace for me from working at a lot of the other companies I've worked at, where people look at it as a job, but it's not a passion for the mission. Whereas at Firefox, it really is.
Yeah, it's rare to find in technology, period. So I feel very similarly. Let's look forward to the future, though. What kinds of projects are on the roadmap? What's on the horizon?
Thinking about the roadmap, we really think about it as a portfolio approach. So first is basics. There's all these basic things that people need to do. How do we make them more productive? How do we just make the browsing experience a little bit better? And so we've launched a lot of features recently that we're building upon, things like vertical tabs, which give people more space, things like tab groups, which help with tab overload. We're doing things like on-device translation that helps data private. So I'd say 70% of our time is focused on all these basics that we hear consistently that people just oh, can you make my existing experience better? So we have a great tool called Mozilla Connect, which we solicit a lot of requests, people vote on them, and we really look at all that feedback. And then finally, on the innovative side, which is where I talk a lot about the next 3 to 5 years, that's where AI is going to be at the core of that. And so you go from a world where a browser was, let's say, browsing. And I oftentimes joke, I'm do we need to change the name browser to something else? Because a browser is going to do more than just helping you browse, but you're browsing in order to accomplish a task. So, if you go to a website to book a restaurant reservation, maybe you don't want to keep hitting refresh for the time slot that you want to become available. You can tell your browser to go do that for you. If you're looking at a site and you don't understand a concept, or you want to translate the page to a language that you speak that's different than the language that the website is written in, you can start to get the website to be more like a tutor. And then finally, it's a lot of things that you're doing, you're entering a form, you're writing an email, you're writing a document. Can the browser start to understand you and help you with that? But we want to do it also in a very Firefox way, which means that no one is going to be forced to do anything they don't want to do. Like this is all choice. We want users to have like the agency to say like, this is a feature that's beneficial for you. You can use it. If it's not beneficial, then you don't have to use it. It doesn't take any of your data. And I think that's going to be very unique and differentiated compared to how some competitors are going to create a more opinionated view of they know what you want versus we say we want users to decide what they want.
I really like the idea of breaking down product swim lanes into, almost basic, intermediate, moving things forward like that versus what I think is traditional is business areas. One thing that you said towards the end really kind of struck a chord with me was how do you weigh the voice of the community? Is it something that starts the product and then you kind of launch the product, have a continuous feedback loop of, but how do you kind of create some of these items that is requested from the Firefox community?
If you look at our organization, we're not a publicly traded company with like shareholders that's trying to like maximize, the quarterly revenue. We're trying to build the best browser and we're trying to deliver on what our customers want. And so the last 3 months, I'd say, especially, we've been on a really good roll of launching some of the top requested features like tab groups, vertical tabs. We have like multiple profiles in development. And when I look at like web forums and threads, like there's this recognition that we're making people's lives better. And so that's why I'd say like everything like starts from our developers and our end consumers. But when we launch features as well, there's a lot of feedback. And if you see follow-up releases that we have, you'll see that we address a lot of the feedback that we see to just continually make sure that anything that we launch, like it's not done when we ship it, it's done when, it's so called like landing it. And that's when users have been happy with the features.
In regard to AI, what are users asking for or giving you feedback about?
In AI, I think that there are two sides of the spectrum today. One is things that are, you may not even call it AI if it wasn't for the AI hype. Like, how do you summarize a page? How do you like give me a preview of a link? How do you, maybe convert text to voice? The other side of the spectrum is where I think you hear a lot of discussion on like agentic and operator like behavior. And this is this like magical, like go book an airline ticket for me for my trip next summer for my family to Japan. And there's a lot of things that you have to have, like, what kind of seat do you want? What kind of price do you want? Do you have a frequent flyer program that you like? And I think those are like the cases are cited, but there's a lot of like implications to people's lives that are negative also with that of like, are you taking away someone's like agency or decision making, or you have like ulterior motives if you steer them towards like the higher priced option because that's where you make more profit margin. And so we don't want to like focus on those either. But to me, like where the middle ground is like, can you help people's lives become better? Can you help the browser get out of the way? So there's all these things that AI just gets better when it has more context. And I think that's why the browser has this unique knowledge of it has your context. We can keep it on device. We can do it in a much more private way. You're not getting other people training on your data, but it's just making your life better. And it's easier for you to accomplish the task that you want to accomplish without steering you one direction or getting in the way of that.
What is something that excites you about the world of AI and something that you kind of want to keep cautious about?
My positive side on AI is like, can it just give humans like more time to do the things that they love and like help us be more productive? I think that's a lot to do with like technology in general, is like, how does technology like improve the quality of humans' lives? And I think AI just goes towards like, can we do that? The negative side of it though is, I've talked to a lot of people about like AI ideas, and one of the things that's interesting is some things that AI can automate. Like I was talking to a pharmacist, and it's like, oh, we can automate your ability to talk to your customers. And the interesting thing that he said is that's the part of his job that he loved the most. Like he loved talking to customers. He loved knowing them. And so I think it's this like careful thing of like, how do we actually make sure like AI doesn't take away like the stuff that we enjoy? So like, you hear a lot of like things like creativity, like people want to do creativity, like, whether I love drawing, like, I don't want to say like, okay, I give a prompt and AI does it, but like, how do we like help humans continue to be like creative and not, take the things we do enjoy away, but it's like, can we get AI to do things that we don't enjoy so we get more time to do the things we do enjoy?
Is there a philosophy or a guiding philosophy, rather, or North Star you like to follow in regard to making product decisions?
Our goal is to create the most amount of value with the time that we have in order to build features. And so going back to like why I think it's so important to listen to customers and how people use our product, how they want to use our product, because that to me like means you're not building something that you personally want like necessarily. And of course, like I think we're all big browser users. So I think that we are in a lot of ways our consumers as well. But I think it's like careful to like not build like things that people don't want. And so a lot of the prioritization is like, how do we ensure that people are actually interested in the future we're building? So it's all about like, how do we, make sure that we're doing things that are like the highest leverage possible, and just providing value for people at the end of the day.
What has helped you be successful in rolling out products? Is it, a certain cadence of breaking down things? Is it the team behind you? Just anything that you could almost give advice on?
Yeah, so there are a few principles that I think are just like helpful for us to be more efficient. One thing that you're talking about is like agile development, and part of that is like starting small. So rather than going underground for 2 years and coming out with this like perfect feature and then saying, okay, guys, this is like perfect, which it's definitely not going to be for sure. But can you like start small? And so, some people call this like the minimum viable product. I think that's the wrong way to phrase it. Another way to phrase it is the minimum valuable product. So you'll see the memes of like, rather than, building the wheels for a car first, it's like you build a bicycle, then you build a scooter, then you build a motorcycle, then you build a car. And so each stage as you build, it is like value that you're creating and it's usable. Versus, if you build one wheel and the second wheel and you don't have like a body and you don't have a seat, like, you're starting like maybe agile, but you're not actually creating value at any of the stages that you're launching. But it's really thinking of like, can you break it down into pieces, but at each of these stages that you're really driving value. And so when we look at development at Firefox, like a lot of the features that we're launching, like we launched custom wallpapers. So, we have a selection of wallpapers that we can launch, but again, this is just the first page, like first aspect of allowing people to customize their new tab. And then you can imagine like, well, then, can you pick your own widgets? Can you pick stock quotes? Can you pick all these things? But, wallpaper is a way to personalize it. And so we started with one area, but then, and our roadmap is all the different ways that someone might want to customize the page. Same thing with like tab groups as we launched it, with one way, and then it's like, okay, now you have much more advanced functionality as we see how people use it, as we see feedback and stuff, and that just helps us be efficient.
Well, on that car note, I want to shift gears a little. And you like that?
That's
Okay, but to be more serious, a few episodes ago, we talked to Laura Chambers about the ongoing Google antitrust case, and I wanted to see if you had any update on that.
Yeah, so the trial is wrapped up. The judge recently asked a lot of questions. Firefox participated in that, and so we had our CFO give some updates. We believe very strongly in independent browsers. We think that is important to competition. I think a lot of times when rulings are made, like there's this potential for collateral damage that's not in actually going to create a more competitive search ecosystem. And so what we've like just been advocating for is to really get to the core of the case is like, let's create an open internet. Let's create a great way to support independent browsers like Firefox that support over 200 million users around the world and make sure that we do have a competitive and open internet.
Laura was also talking about what Firefox's greater role is in the major ecosystem of the internet and the role of independent browsers. As a hypothetical, what would the internet look like if Firefox had not posed any kind of challenge to Internet Explorer back in the day?
With Internet Explorer, like the motivation of Microsoft, you could say like they didn't have a huge amount of revenue coming from the internet. And so ultimately, they're not motivated to create the best internet. They're motivated to encourage people to create apps for Windows. Once Firefox came out, like a lot of the technologies that Firefox introduced allowed much more rich experiences, much more innovative experiences. So you see a lot of things like like Google Maps, where you can drag and drop the map tiles, like collaborative editing, where you can go into a document and multiple people can type on it at the same time. If you can look at like entire things where you're filing your taxes online, all these things were like not possible. Before it was all static. It's like, if I need something to happen, I have to click on something and I have to go to the next page. And so you see this like, oh, a form to fill out something is 10 pages long. And so the open internet and the emergence of so many of the companies that are successful today was directly a result of Firefox enabling like innovation and competitiveness in the internet space. And without that competition, I would imagine like that none of these things would have been possible that you see and take for granted today.
You talked earlier about the roadmap for 3 to 5 years. Is there an ideal state that you would want Firefox, the browser, maybe the internet in general, in that timeline?
We're definitely going to push for a better internet, even just like as a competitive alternative of just saying like you have to like adhere to what people want, otherwise they will move. So really, really important, I think, next couple of years for Firefox to just like preserve this openness that I think have real plausible paths to shutting off in the next few years if there's not an open alternative.
Is there anything before we wrap up that you'd like to add before we go?
I would just say, tell your friends to use Firefox. Like the one thing is, I don't think that people talk much about what browser they use because, kind of just like, you accept the default. But, I'd say like, tell people, like if you enjoy using Firefox, tell them. And if we can do better, I would encourage anyone listening to podcasts, like let us know. Like you're our customer, you're who we serve. And so I look at this as everything we're doing. Hopefully we're doing it together.
Thank you, Ajit, for joining us and telling us more today.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
I really enjoyed that. I seriously am probably going to steal a lot of those, how to break down a product in those more smaller fashion. And hopefully I can one day get my resume that boosted. To the listeners, what upcoming Firefox feature are you looking forward to most? Let us know in the comments.
Subscribe to the channel and be sure to download Firefox because it's the best. We'll see you next time.